So here we go. What we're going to cover today is how to build rapport, how to establish yourself as the expert in the marketplace, and then how to do a consultation that reaffirms your understanding of their motivation, that explores what would make this a great experience for them, because we do recognize that we're providing services in a consumer-based economy right now, that it's not enough to just get the job done. We have to get the job done and provide a great experience for them at the same time. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about how to educate people in the marketplace, how to present your unique value proposition, what's the right way to set expectations mutually between both parties. And if you decide that you're a good fit, then you're going to close for the opportunity to sign a buyer's agency agreement, which gives you the exclusive right to represent them in the purchase of a home. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is, if you have any questions, just unmute yourself. I've been talking pretty much nonstop since 9 o'clock this morning, and my voice is getting a little tired. So I'd love to have as much interaction as we can. Just jump right in. The first thing I'm going to ask you, though, to answer the question is, we call this a buyer's consultation and not a buyer's presentation. And those are different skills. Consulting and presenting are different things. And I just want to start with an overview understanding. When you think about the two, consulting and presenting, how do you understand the difference? Either throw it up in chat, or what would really be fun is just unmute yourself. I'd love to have some conversation around what consulting is and how it differs from presenting. Anyone?
I think consulting is more where you give the client an opportunity to tell you what their needs are and what they're looking for, so you can get an understanding and how to approach the home that they're looking for, their financial situation, and better help them, as opposed to presenting, where you just sit there and tell them all this info, which would probably overwhelm them and not get you their signature.
Yeah, I think that covers it in a nutshell. That's largely the difference. Anybody have any other thoughts they want to add to amplify that? I mean, that is...
I think consulting is two ways and presenting is a one-way channel, as he mentioned.
Yeah. You know, I come out of healthcare and I think about doctors, and I think, you know, all the detailed knowledge that the doctor has to have to be effective in treating a patient or a client. And you don't need to know everything the doctor knows. You only need to know a little bit of what the doctor knows, and the doctor needs to kind of get that out of you by asking great questions and doing a great diagnosis. You know, in healthcare, what we say is prescription without diagnosis first is malpractice. And you know what? In healthcare, we treat it a little differently sometimes in real estate. Sometimes in real estate or in sales in general, we assume we know what you need to know, and we just kind of barf it out, or we just dump it right on you. That's not what I want you to do. There are certainly times when you're going to need to become good in your presentation skills and your communication skills, and certain knowledge is important that we share, especially around market conditions and the like. But what I really want us to do is get really, really good at consulting. I remember, well, I'll leave that story aside because I want to get right into this. So what presenters do is they just, go ahead.
When you say consulting, you're not asking us to consult them on the financial aspects. That's for us to refer them to one of those specialists, right?
Pretty much. I mean, truth be told, you know, it wasn't too many years ago when I got into real estate, when we actually were the ones that were doing that financial evaluation. We were the ones that were looking at pay stubs and bank records and determining what their debt to income ratios were. And now we've kind of turfed that out to the professional mortgage lenders. But make no mistake, the real estate commission still says you're the one with the license. And so make sure that the people that you refer out to do that evaluation are doing it right, because you are the one at the end of the day who's accountable for it. So that's one of the reasons why we put you in relationship with people like Stephen, who we know are good. I don't know every fly-by-night mortgage lender out there or every lender at even a big company. So I'm not suggesting that we're consulting about the detail of their finances necessarily. What I am suggesting is that we're really asking questions around what's important to them, why it's important, really understanding their motivation, helping them to find not just any house, but the right house, which means we've got to ask great questions and then share the pieces of knowledge that we know from being in the marketplace that are relevant to their decision, so that we can help guide them. That's really more what I'm talking about. So presenters decide in advance what information is important. They talk more than they listen. They kind of treat everybody as all the same. Consultants listen more than they talk. They decide what information is really relevant by asking great questions. And then you really want to make sure that you position yourself as different in your approach. And you do that through consulting. You're going to see that people, human beings, have biases. We know that that's just the way human beings are. And I won't get into all the brain research, which gets into how biases are formed and why they form. But they're there. And one of the biases that people have is they, generally speaking, don't like salespeople. They don't like us. They don't trust us. They think we're out for our own good, that we're putting our needs against theirs. And by and large, when we behave in a way that feels salesy, it reinforces this unconscious resistance. And one of the ways to not trigger that, and one of the ways to break through that, is to be different. Is to not just give the same old kind of presentation the same way everybody else does, that feels so cookie cutter, that feels so rote, that triggers so much resistance. Consulting is a unique conversation, and there's skills to be learned around how you do that. I'm going to give you today the framework. I'm going to give you what I call the track. You think about a racetrack, and if all the horses at the horse race have to go through turn 1 before they can get to turn 2, and turn 2 before they get to turn 3. And the reason why we force them to go around the track is the only way to know who's the fastest is they all have to do it in a uniform way. There is a process. There is a track to follow in a consultation with our real estate clients. There's a track for a buyer's consultation. What do we have to accomplish first? And once we've accomplished that, what do we have to accomplish second? And once we accomplish that, what do we accomplish third? When you know the track, when you know the format, then to some degree you have the freedom to kind of have conversations at each level that are more natural and more comfortable. But I'm going to share with you the model today. And it's the buyer's consultation track. And so here's what it is. If you look at this schematic that we've created here, what you see on the left-hand side is it says you're speaking. On the right-hand side, it says you're listening. There's a combination of speaking and listening that we do. And sometimes we listen more, and sometimes we take the initiative and speak more. So in this model, when the bar is more on the speaking side, you're talking more. When the bar is more on the listening side, you're listening more. And then from top to bottom in this schematic is the size of these bars. If you look at the top to the bottom, this represents time. The wider the bar, like the needs analysis here, the more time we're going to spend, the more work we have to do. The thinner the bar, like this very first one, setting the stage, it doesn't take long. We're just going to do this, move through it quickly, and then move on. So I give the visual here because I think it helps you to think in your mind, what am I doing? How much time should I be focusing on here? And I think this schematic really worked well for me. The way we're doing this, though, is we're building on this notion of momentum. Success leaves clues. And one of the things that we've learned is that to go through a great consultation, each step begins by building relationship. It begins by building rapport. People need to like us and trust us before they're willing to commit to allow us to represent them. And so the very beginning part of the track is designed to break down all of the resistances that people have about salespeople in general, and to position ourselves as someone that they like, someone who cares about them, someone who has their own interests at heart. And then we move into establishing ourselves as the expert, someone that can be trusted. And so we do it in a very specific sequence that I'm going to walk you through. Last but not least, over here is a little traffic light with a green light. And I put that here. It's kind of an image that I stole from a book I read years ago called Green Light Selling. It's over on the bookshelf somewhere behind me, written by a guy by the name of Don Espermonte. And it's a book about neurolinguistics to some degree. And what he talks about is he gives the image of if you're driving down the boulevard across town, sometimes you catch all the green lights and everything just seems to go and you have very little friction. It just cross town in no time whatsoever. And then some days it's like you catch every red light. Well, this process can be a little bit like that. The red light is resistance that's put up by the buyer, or in the listing consultation, resistance put up by the seller. And what we need to do is we need to minimize that so that we can get green lights so that we can move smoothly through this process. And we're going to show you how to do that. But here's how we go. Step number one, very first thing we do when we're with buyers. Now, again, best of all worlds for a buyer's consultation, in person, face-to-face. In a COVID world, maybe not. A lot of this has been done increasingly on Zoom or different kinds of technologies that allow us to at least have a conversation, but maybe not right across the table from each other. But regardless, the very first thing that we're going to do in taking control, in creating some safety, is we're going to set the stage. And in this phase of the process, step number one, it's you who's doing most of the talking. Your buyers are doing most of the listening. And I like to start with this phrase that I put right here that says, before we get started. And before you get started is an opportunity for you to show a little gratitude. And we finish that statement by saying something like, before we get started, I just want to take a moment and tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys tonight. I know how much competition there is out in the marketplace, and there's so many different agents that you could choose to represent you in the purchase of a home. And anytime I have the opportunity to sit down with a couple and sort of audition for the opportunity to take on that role, I'm humbled by it. And I just want to let you know how much I appreciate this. Now, you can ad-lib that. I just ad-libbed that pretty much as I said it. But why do you think it's important to begin the process by sharing a little bit of gratitude like that? Other than the fact that your mother would be so proud of you, why else? What do you think the strategic reason for starting by sharing a little gratitude would be? Anybody have some thoughts around that?
Makes it more personal.
It makes it more personal. In what way?
Well, it shows that you're humble. There's no air of arrogance. You're there to generally provide support.
Okay, love it.
Assistance. And I think it kind of sets the stage so they'll be more receptive to the information that you'll be providing.
Absolutely. Anybody want to add to that?
It probably makes them feel that they are in control and that, we are not trying to force anything upon them, that we appreciate the opportunity to even have the chance to speak with them. So it's not all about us.
Yeah, and you guys have both kind of hit it right on the head. And here's the thing. What I said in the beginning was we know that we are going up against the reality that the public doesn't always love salespeople. In fact, they don't always love realtors. If you look at the Harris polls and the Harris studies, and when they studied the most prestigious professions in the country, I'm not happy to say it, but salespeople and realtors in specific don't usually score at the top of that list. In fact, there's one particular type of salesperson who time and time again always shows up at the bottom of the list of the most prestigious professions. What kind of salesperson do you think that is? This particular product that this person sells?
Insurance?
No, it's not insurance. It's the used car salesman. The used car salesman is a character, isn't it? It's of the person who is just out for his own goods, and it's become a caricature. There was only 1 year in history that I can remember in terms of tracking and following the Harris polls that there was any other profession that bumped out used car salespeople as the least honorable profession in the country. There was 1 year, it happened to be 2018, I believe, United States congressperson was seen as the least prestigious role in the country, which is a horrifying statement, but it was true.
I know, that's terrible.
It's awful, but it was true. Ironically, it doesn't surprise me. The number one profession usually in the top of that list time and time again is nurses. There's something about a nurse and the service, the selflessness of a nurse that people honor and respect.
Oh.
Salespeople are usually in the bottom third. And knowing that coming in, what we've got to do is we've got to make ourselves more likable right out of the gate. And there's nothing to make you more likable than to make people feel special. Dale Carnegie, when he wrote the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, said, your own name is the most precious sound you can ever hear. And so what we're doing is this is strategically being empathic. And this is not manipulative unless you're being inauthentic. Because if you don't really believe what you're saying, trust me, people's BS meters work and they will know that you're not being authentic, and then you're just not. So if you don't really believe that you're grateful for the opportunity, then don't say it. My hope would be that you are. But the thing that happens is that this is really fascinating research that I want to share with you. It comes out of a research study that was done at the University of Miami about 15 years ago. And what they determined was when you ask people to self-disclose and make them feel special, specifically through self-disclosure, which we're going to get to again in a minute. But when you ask people to self-disclose, to talk about their own experiences, and then you genuinely are concerned, you care, you listen intently, when you make people feel special, something actually happens in that interaction that causes a brain chemical to be released in the brain, which is called dopamine. Dopamine is this kind of addictive, crack-like substance that sort of washes over the brain, and people are sort of just feeling like, I'm not sure what it is about talking to Roddy, but I'm kind of digging this. I like this guy. He's making me feel good.
Thank you.
What I want to do in the very beginning of this consultation and any consultation with a new client is I want them to feel special. And so I'm going to take a minute before we get started and let them know that I appreciate them. And there's a strategic form of empathy that's involved in doing this. We're doing it to break down the resistances so that we can have a conversation without you pushing back so hard against me, right? That's why we do this. And one of the things that I like to say, sort of in setting the tone here, in setting the stage, is to say, look, here's how I kind of see tonight going. For the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to have a conversation about what's bringing you into the market to buy a home. We're going to talk about what your needs are in terms of buying a home and why it's important to you and what you're looking for. We're going to talk about what would be required to make this a really world-class experience for you. We're going to spend some time talking about the market conditions that we're in right now because they're very unusual. And the competition is unlike anything we've seen in a long time. And we're going to talk about what might need to happen in order for you to have success. And then we're going to really kind of make some decisions about whether or not we can both live up to each other's mutual expectations. And quite honestly, one of three things could happen tonight. You might decide to hire me to represent you in the purchase of a home. You might not decide to hire me and to represent you when purchasing a home. And honestly, if I decide that I'm not the right agent for you, that someone else would do a better job of helping you achieve your goals, if I don't believe that I can get the job done in the way that I believe you deserve, then I might refer you to someone else. Does that sound fair? That's it. And there's four things that we've done here. Number one, we've set some time parameters on what to expect. For the next 45 minutes or so, this is what I think we'll do first. This is what we'll do second. This is what we'll do third. Why is that important? Because people are a little anxious about moving. We know that buying a house and selling a house, but specifically buying a house, as exciting as it can be and all the great reasons why we do it, it's going to create disruption. It's going to require additional debt. On some levels, we know that it's one of the most stressful events that you can go through in your lifetime is to move. And so even though people can be excited, my expectation is there's going to be some apprehension. And what we know is when people know what to expect, their apprehensive level comes down. Again, I'm going to go back to healthcare. We learned a long time ago that if you have an outpatient procedure, that we're going to bring you in and we're going to walk you through the paces a day or two before. And we're going to say, here's what's going to happen. You're going to show up at 6:30 in the morning. You're going to come up to the second floor. This is the window where you're going to meet Mary. She's going to do the intake work. She's going to get your insurance information, and then she's going to bring you down the hallway. And this is where Sally, who's the nurse is going to get you ready to go. And they're going to have a few minutes to talk to the doctor, and we just outline what you're going to expect that day. Why did we do that? Because we know that if you're having a procedure, you're probably nervous. And if you're nervous, you're kind of uptight. And if you're uptight, your blood pressure is a little higher. And if we can help you know what to expect that day, you're not going to bleed as much. You're not going to need as much pain medication. You're going to recover faster in post-op. We're going to get you home with less side effects simply because you felt more in control of the process. So we're going to set the stage right from jump and let people know what to expect. And then I do like the scripted language of one of three things could happen tonight. You can choose to hire me. We call that an embedded command. The command hire me, we're embedding right into the sentence. You might choose to hire me tonight. You might not choose to hire me. Now I've heard that same unconscious command a second time. And the third is a technique that we sort of call a takeaway, where we sort of leave open the possibility that we might not choose to become dance partners. And the way I like to frame it is around a pattern interrupt, a way of behaving so different from what they would expect a salesperson to do. They think we're all out there for ourselves. They think we're only in this to kind of make a buck, that we don't care what matters to them. And when they hear me say, if I don't think that I'm the right person for you, if I think that you have particular needs that I can't meet, I may refer you to someone that would do a better job. Does that seem fair? In their head, they're like, hold up, wait, what? That isn't what I expected you to say. And it just kind of breaks down these resistances. This setting the stage does two critical things. It creates a sense of control for them so they're less apprehensive. It repositions you as different from any salesperson the way that they've behaved ever before. And that's what we're going to do to start this first step. It doesn't take but a minute to do. Start with the gratitude, get a little dopamine drip going, set the stage in terms of what to expect. And then at that point, when we've accomplished what we wanted to in this first step, we've got a green light. It's time to move on to step two, right? And you might have your materials here, right? You might have your buyer's guide ready to go. You might have your value proposition written out so you can ready to talk about it. You might have your pens or notepads or whatever it is, your props. But this is what we're doing first. And then we move on to doing the needs analysis. And now what do you think we're trying to uncover during the needs analysis? Anybody can unmute or put in chat. When we do the needs analysis, what are we trying to figure out? Come on, I baited you. Somebody can tell me that.
What they're looking for in terms of what are the requirements?
Okay.
For the home
Or
studio.
what are their needs?
Their needs. What are their needs? Yeah.
It's the needs analysis, right? And so what we're really trying to do is figure out, look, what do you need? What part of my knowledge do you need to learn? What do I need to share? What do I not need to share? And so we're going to start by asking a lot of questions. If you look here, back to the scheme, this is the line of talking and listening. We're talking a little bit, we're asking questions, and we're doing a lot of listening here, right? And so what we're doing is we're trying to hopefully this is someone that we've talked to before. We've done our buyer's qualification already. We talked about that in a previous session. We have a basic understanding of what they're doing. We've determined that they're ready, willing, and able to get to the level of an approval. We start by confirming what we think we know. You know what, when we spoke last, my understanding is that you're looking to buy a home. And if I understand correctly, the reason why you're looking to buy a home right now is because you've been renting for a long time and you're concerned about constantly paying the landlord and making the landlord rich and kind of trying to figure out a way to create some wealth for yourself and your own family. Is that accurate? Is that my understanding? Yeah, that's right. And tell me more. What else? Well, we want to have a place, the place of our own that we can kind of do whatever we want. We just want them to tell the story. What we're doing here, go back to this self-disclosure loop. I'm going to ask questions for you to describe what's important for you, and I'm going to pay attention, re-triggering that dopamine drip. I'm really, really, really early on. The very first phase of this is getting you to feel comfortable with me, getting you to like talking to me, and I'm learning at the same time what's important to you. I have a short video I'm going to share with you, and it's a video of a guy by the name of Tony DeCello. And Tony is now semi-retired. He was the master coach trainer for our Keller Williams coaching company. At one time, he was the number 6 real estate agent in the world when he was working for Remax. Pretty successful guy. And we're going to go through a little bit of a video about the needs analysis that has Tony. It features Tony a little bit. It's about 3 minutes long. I'm going to share this and then we'll talk about it. So let me move my mic so you can hear this well. I don't want to blast your ears out, but let's get this needs analysis going.
Needs analysis, the systematic process of collecting information about needs, wants, and desires that is used to establish and define goals. Step 2 of the buyer consultation is the needs analysis. Only when you understand what is ultimately important to your customers can you deliver it. Many agents ask their clients, "What do you want in a house?" and stop there. They don't realize the answer to that question isn't the same as "What do you need?" or "What's important to you?" Determining your customer's core wants, needs, and values is a process. Draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper and write needs on the left and wants on the right, and use it to track their needs and wants as you go through this process. At this point, you will have a clear understanding of what buyers need versus what they want, but you are not done. Now, you want to drill down and uncover their values by finding out why they need and want what they do. Use this question: what about blank is important to you? Let's see how it works. Say your buyer has told you that they want or need a large yard. You say,
"What's about a large yard that's important to you?"
Your buyer says, "I like to garden." You ask,
"You like gardening. What's important about gardening?"
Your buyer says, "I like to spend time outdoors. It helps me relax." You ask,
"Make you feel relaxed. And what's important about being relaxed?"
Your buyer says, "When I'm relaxed, I can spend more quality time with my wife." Bullseye. A large yard equals family. At this point, you have uncovered a value. You can now look for other ways it applies to your buyer.
A large yard is important because it allows you to spend quality time with your wife, correct? So what else about your new home would be important to you in terms of spending more time with your wife?
Exercise. Find a partner in class and ask them about their favorite part of their house and why it's important. Drill down with your questions to find out why.
So that's Tony. And I have to say, I love Tony, but he does come off as a bit of a stiff in that video. But what did you hear? What popped out about some of the things that he was trying to communicate there, or the video was? Anything jump out at you?
Drilling down
Yeah, drilling down.
would uncover a value, which is good.
You know what we tend to do, especially when we're nervous ourselves, is we tend to not go deep enough.
Yeah.
We tend to kind of water ski across the surface of our questions, and we ask a new topic, and we don't really go deep and understand. Here's the thing that we need to understand. Human behavior is driven by emotion, always. Logic, we say, gets people to think, but it's always emotion that causes behavioral action. And so we've got to dive deep enough to figure out what's the driver here. And what we tend to do, especially when we're nervous, is we kind of have a bunch of things that we want to know about. So we say, what's important to you in buying a home? And they say, want a really big yard. Terrific. Check. What else? And they say, well, I want to make sure that I get it in this part of the neighborhood. Check. What else? And we don't really understand what's important about those things. What I want you to do is something that we call mineral rights. You know, Susan Scott, who's the author of a book called Fierce Conversations, refers to these as mineral rights conversations. You keep digging till you get to the gold or the oil, right? And the idea is just keep going deeper. If I was going to drill a hole and try to drill a well, if I was trying to find water, and if I dug a shovel full of soil out of the ground and there was no water, would I be better off taking 3 steps to the left and taking another shovel, and then 3 more steps to the left and taking another shovel? Or would it be better to stay exactly where I am and go deeper and deeper and deeper until I hit the water? Yeah, that's what we want to do. And so that line of questioning was, as Tony did, a little bit awkwardly, I will admit, but it was, hey, you know, tell me what's important about the yard. Well, the yard is this and that and the other thing. Great, you feel relaxed. You know, that's cool. What is it about relaxed that matters so much, right? Well, when I'm relaxed, and you finally get down to the driver, which was when I feel calm and relaxed, I feel I have a better relationship with my wife, and now we get it. This is what the driver is. And you're going to see when you go deep, we call it going 3 deep, probably 2 or 3 deeper questions before you change the subject. That's the way you want to conduct your needs analysis, and really get a sense that you not only understand what they want to do, but you also understand why they want to do it. Why is it important to them, right? That's what we're aiming for here. So back to the slides here, we're going to do that needs analysis. We're going to make sure that we understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish in the purchase of a home and why it matters so darn much to them. And then we're going to move on. Before we leave this section, we're going to talk about the customer experience. And you know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, now that I have a picture of what it is you're trying to do here, let me ask you a question. You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being an experience that was just so good that you couldn't wait to tell all your friends about it, and 1 being a real train wreck, what needs to happen for this to be a 10 for you? And then we listen. And when we ask those questions, they're going to tell us what's important. And it's different for different people. Maybe it's, you know, I need to feel like you're not being pushy, that you're responsive to our needs, that when we ask you a question, that you respond and don't make us feel silly, or that you respond quickly. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But we're just going to kind of make sure that we understand, how do we have to show up so that not only do we get the job done, but that they have a great experience while doing it, because that is critical for any business today, to be really thinking about how to create a great consumer experience, or you will not get repeat and referral business. And that's too important to leave on the table.
Or referrals.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we go 3 deep, we understand their needs, we understand what makes this a great experience. And then the way that we transition through some of these topics, I like to do a technique that I call a summary and introduce. I'm going to summarize, now that we understand what you're looking for in a home and what needs to happen to make this a great experience, let's introduce the idea now. Let's talk about the market that we're in, because the market is really different. And we talk about the market, and we talk about how demanding it is right now, and how little inventory there is, and how much demand there is, and how competition right now, in order to win, sometimes you have to go over asking price, and sometimes by a lot. I was recently talking to an agent in a market center that I used to be the team leader for, who put a house on the market about a month ago, and in 3 days had 30 offers on the table. The house sold for 150% of its asking price. By the way, the asking price was over $700,000. It is that kind of a market right now. And if buyers don't know that the level of competition is that strong, they're going to not be able to compete properly. And so it's not uniformly like that in all markets, but we have to be able to understand the market that we're in, so buyers know the rules of the game, so that they can do the right thing and get the best chance of winning. So we have to do that kind of education. And in the last session, we talked about the data that you really have to master to be able to educate in the right way. We talked about the days on market on average, but we talked about the inventory levels. Are they going up? Are they coming down? We talked about the average list to sale price retention. What percentage discount is the average sale actually going for? We talked about the absorption rate, the calculation of how active is the market, and is it a buyer's market, and how strong of a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market, and how strong of a seller's market? All of this education has to go on so that we trust that buyers understand before we take them out and start showing them homes. I don't want you to fall in love with a home and not be able to get it. And I know that there's this adage out there, and I get where it comes from, that sometimes a buyer just has to lose 1 or 2 before they really learn the hard way of what they have to do to compete. And I get that, and to some extent I don't disagree. But I also think that as the professional, we've got to protect them from losing their dream homes. I mean, I just imagine a parent standing on the side of Route 4 with a 40-year-old toddler just walking across the highway, and mom just kind of sits there and holds her arms and says, well, you know, sometimes you just got to get hit by a car before you learn. No parent could do that. You can't let people get hurt. You're the grown-up. Well, you're the professional, and you're the consultant. And we've got to make sure that we've done everything that we can to make sure that they're prepared to do what it takes to win. And that's this educational phase. And then once we've got the belief that they're ready, that we've communicated that well, now let's talk about the process itself. Let's talk about the purchase process. And maybe you want to talk a little bit at the mortgage process and the financing process. And this is where you're going to make sure that they've done the right things to get pre-qualified, or they will before you get too far along. Maybe you talk here about the showing process. And on Friday, I'm going to show you a very, very specific process of showing homes, which on average reduces your showing time to 1 day, 1 afternoon. Now, does it work 100% of the time? No, nothing does. But I can tell you that this is a process that was created by a guy named Sean Healy. We're actually going to hear Sean explain it to Gary Keller in an audio call that was recorded about 10 years ago. And Sean contends that in his process, in his practice, about 80 or 90% of the time, by doing this way, buyers went out one day and purchased the home. And I can tell you from an experience as a coach and as a trainer, when I was actively coaching agents more than I do today, I've been coaching to this methodology for years. And while we didn't achieve a 90% rate of one day out, we sell a house, we were well over 50%.
Wow.
And I want you to think about this. Very recently, I had an opportunity to represent one of my daughter's best friends in the purchase of their very first home. We went out one day and they bought a house. There's a way we can teach you how to do this. And you may, because it's very different. It's very different from what people expect. And we're going to talk about that on Friday, but you may outline that even right here. Let's talk about the way that we're going to actually show homes. We have a very different, unique way of doing this so that you're going to find the home that you're looking for quicker and be able to take action on it faster than most agents. And you could outline that here. But the second phase is we're doing the needs analysis, we're providing education, we're reviewing the process, and when we feel that we've got this done, then we've got a green light. And if we haven't achieved all these tasks, we got to stick around until we've done this, because this is building momentum to move on to part 3. By the way, Gary Keller, words of wisdom, you're in the business of understanding the market and explaining it clearly and effectively with service thrown in all along the way. Your ability to communicate effectively with a wide range of audiences, people that are very detail-oriented, people that are not, people that are driven and want to move very quickly, people that need to digest things a little bit at a time. Your ability to practice and hone your consulting skills will be the differentiator between agents who do a big business and agents who want to, but don't really seem to, right? Once we've completed the task of step 2, we're starting to build rapport all along the way. We're setting the stage. We're helping to break down resistance. We're helping them to feel in control. We're getting them engaged in a conversation about what matters to them. What would make this a great experience for them? All along, that self-disclosure causes them to be heard and feel listened to feel a sense of, you're different. This isn't what I expected. You're a different kind of salesperson. I think I like you more. Now, you educate. We educated to prove that, to talk about the process so that we can let them understand that not only are we likable, but we know what we're talking about. We educate with the data. We educate with the process. Now, step 3 is where we position ourselves as the unique solution to getting their needs met. And we do it, again, transitioning through with summary and introduction. Now that we have a good picture of what your goals are and you have a good understanding of the market conditions and the process, let's talk a little bit about why my team and I, or why me, if you're a solo agent, is really the best choice for you to get your needs met. And in this stage, we're going to talk about what makes you uniquely qualified to work with them. What do you know differently about being in the market? How much deeper level of knowledge of the inventory do you have? How much deeper level of the communities do you have? And make no mistake, being a hyper-local expert is far more important than being a generalist. You will find more business, and we've talked about this again in other classes. Agents, the very top agents, you will see again and again and again, they do not try to work multiple markets. They have a license in New Jersey. They could work anywhere in the state, but they pick a few communities and they go really deep in those communities. They become the top market share agent in a few communities, rather than do a little bit of business in a lot of communities. And the reason for that is expertise. By focusing, by drilling down, by becoming hyper deep in your knowledge, you become more valuable as a consultant. And people will always pay for specialized knowledge far more than they will ever pay for generalized knowledge. It is the same in every discipline. So we're going to talk about, what do we know? What's the knowledge that we have from our experience of being in the market that you can't get anywhere else? What do I know that you can't Google, right? That's what we've got to communicate here. What's our unique value proposition and why it matters to them? It's always what's in it for me. And Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, when you work with me, because of the processes that we have and the knowledge that I have and the skills that I have, oh, and by the way, I might even have a menu of services of things that I do that other people just won't, that will serve your needs better. Let me give you an example. One of the things that I always did when I worked with a buyer, especially a buyer who had a signed buyer's agency agreement with me, was before we actually wrote up an offer, I was going to go to the town and I was going to pull all the property records. I was going to make sure that there were no open permits. I was going to make sure that the town had the town's tax information was what it said in the listing. I was going to make sure that if there was anything that I knew about that house because I was in it with you that isn't the way that the town believes it is. What was commonplace for us in Somerset County in the beginning was a lot of people finished their basements in these big old 4,000 square foot colonial style homes, and the town never knew they did it. And maybe they did it without permits, but a finished space is going to be taxed differently than an unfinished space. And so if the buyer buys the house with a tax bill being what it is, thinking that nothing's going to change, and then the town comes out and says, wait a second, we didn't know this basement was finished, and now there's a 15% bump on their taxes. I don't want that to happen to you, and I'm going to prevent you from getting injured in that way because I'm going to take the extra step and find out if there's any surprises like that before you make your offer. And you know what? Most agents won't go that extra step. But if you will, and if you can articulate the things that you'll do that other folks won't do, that will protect their interests, they will have no problem signing the exclusive representation agreement. Trust me on that. But this is where in part 3, you're talking more. You're really outlining clarity on why they should pick you. And if you don't know yet, that's part of what you're going to work on, is establishing your unique value proposition so you can articulate it clearly with conviction and make no questions about it, right? Does anybody have anything that's unique to their value proposition that they would share, of things that they do or services that they provide or knowledge or skills that they have uniquely that would be of value to a buyer?
I have a background in designing and like interior and marketing and advertising.
I love it. So how would that help a buyer?
I think with interior, I feel like I myself as client have gone to houses where they look so not what I was looking for, but my actually agent, she was an interior designer, so she actually just opened up our eyes and she said, don't look at what you're seeing right now, just give me a chance to explain, even if you cannot see it. But she actually showed us something which was not visual, but it actually made sense.
And that's something that you can do because you've got those eyes and that vision and that training that I know I could not do. Mm-hmm. I can't see that. I had a hard time in the beginning staging because for me, I recognize it's a Y chromosome deficit. I look at a room and if it's functional, I'm happy. There's a chair, there's a table, there's a lamp. We're good. This room is done. No. Right? What people need is, help me see the possibilities that I can't see yet. And if you can do that, that's unique value that not everyone brings. I know a guy who was a builder, and he used to be able to do it the same way from a construction standpoint. Mm-hmm. There was a guy in the Fort Lee office not too long ago who came out of finance. He was a CPA. And his vision was, his unique value, especially when working with investors, is he could help them analyze the finances to see if it made sense. Not every agent can do that. So what your job is to figure out, what do you bring into this world of real estate from your life and previous skill set that translates in and adds value, right? Because when you can do that uniquely, that's where you kind of created your little niche. So you're going to present that and you're going to drive that home and you're going to make sure that they understand. And once you understand this, it's time to move on. You've got a green light. You move on to step 4, which is mutual expectations. 1 of 3 things might happen tonight. You might choose to hire me to represent you. You might not choose to hire me to represent you. And if I decide that we're not a good fit, then I might refer you to someone else. This is where you're going to find out. What expectations, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, do you believe you have the right to expect of me as your agent? That's the question. You know, now that we understand all these other things. What do you believe you have the right to expect of me? And then you shut up and listen. And they're going to tell you. Just it's similar to what makes this a great experience, but it's different. You'll hear things like, my expectation is that you're going to do whatever it is, right? My expectation. And now you've got to make sure you can live up to them. Because I've had people say, my expectation of you is that if I see a house online that I want to see within 30 minutes of the phone call to you, that you're going to be able to get me in the door. Well, I may not be able to deliver on that. And if that's truly what your expectation is, that I'm going to drop everything that I'm doing, I may not be the right guy for you. I have had people say, and this is a fair housing issue, especially in neighborhoods where neighborhoods are changing. My expectation is that you're only going to show us homes where people of this ethnic group live. If that's your expectation, I'm not, that's not me. I'm not going to violate fair housing rules. If you decide and you do your research and you can give me an area in a neighborhood that you have interest in looking in, I'd be happy to show you homes in that area, but I'm not going to be the one who decides where you look and where you don't look. So you ask those expectations to make sure there's no deal killers here, because quite honestly, if there is, move on. No one transaction is ever worth your reputation, your integrity, God forbid your license. Mm-hmm. But I like to set this up from mutual expectations. And the reason for that is that once I understand what you believe you have the right to expect in me, my follow-up question is, what do you believe I have the right to expect of you? And there's this really cool thing called the law of reciprocity. The law of reciprocity is just part of human nature. It's the way the brain is designed. We don't like things to be unbalanced. And when I do something for you, you're going to feel inclined to do something for me. If I come up to you and I say, hey, my name is Hal, what's your name? You're likely to extend your hand and say your name because I did it first. If I just came up to you and said, hey, what's your name? You'd be like, get away from me, creepy guy. I'm not telling you. But because I initiated it, I've set up this reciprocity. And the reciprocity expectation that I'm looking for is a commitment to work with me exclusively. Once I outline what you believe you have the right to expect of me and I can live up to all of those, here's what I expect of you. We talk about, I expect that you're going to do what it takes to get financially qualified. I expect that when we find the right home that you're going to take action. I expect that if we choose to work with each other, we choose to commit to each other. And that lends itself to the signing of the buyer's agency agreement. And so the reason why I do it here and we do it here now is because the next step needs to have some momentum behind it. The next step is getting the agreement to work with you. As long as there's no disqualifiers here, the next step is to get the commitment on the signed buyer's agency agreement. And the law of reciprocity expectation conversation sets that up. And so here's how it goes. It's part 5. I put the motorcycle jumper, Evel Knievel, in here because when I was a kid, there was this crazy ass guy who used to jump his motorcycle over lots of stuff. Some of you remember him. And he broke every bone in his body numerous times. But the reason why I put a motorcycle jumper on this is because it implies momentum. You cannot get across this line of cars by throttling up the motorcycle at the base of the ramp. You need to start from the back of the arena, and you need a momentum to hit that ramp with enough speed to carry you over the jump. Well, the commitment on the buyer's agency agreement is a leap of faith. And in order to take that leap, you need momentum. So just as I said, that strategy to move through these conversations was summary and introduction, I'm going all the way back to the needs analysis, and I'm summarizing what we've accomplished tonight. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we have a good picture of what it is that you're looking for in a home and why that's important to you. And we understand what needs to happen to make this a great experience for you. You have a really good understanding of the market conditions that are going on right now and the things that you're going to need to do to be competitive. We've positioned ourselves as the agent of choice in terms of getting your needs met. And we both agreed that we can live up to each other's expectations. Are you ready to put me to work? And that's the close. Are you ready to put me to work? And you're going to find that by doing that kind of summary and acknowledging all the points of agreement and then asking that question, your answer is going to be 99 times of 100, yeah, let's do it. And you put the buyer's agency agreement in front of them and off you go. And that's the model. That's the sequence. It's 5 parts, and you're going to find your own voice. You're going to find your own way of having these conversations. I'm going to teach you plenty of scripts of ways to say things in prescriptive ways so that people feel a sense of comfort with you. I'm going to teach you how to say things and to use your voice in ways that people will feel safer with you. But you're going to find your own voice. But your voice is going to sing out in the order of this track. So we go back to it again. Handle any objections that come up. You're going to find very few that come up. I just see a chat light turn on here. I just want to make sure if there's a question in chat. You do this all in one sitting, all 5 phases, you betcha. Should take you about an hour. Should take you about an hour, right? And once you get that signed agreement, the very next place that we go to is what's coming next. We go back to setting expectations, setting control. Now it's real. This is what we expect to happen next. If there's any other questions, we solve those here. But we're going to start to begin to look at homes. We're going to start to search for homes, and we're going to go through the process of showing homes. You're going to go ahead and get the mortgage finalized, the pre-qualification finalized before we go out. Whatever needs to happen next, we're going to establish that as step 6, right, of what to happen next. But that's it. This is the way this works. And when you follow the conversational format that begins with setting expectations, doing the needs analysis, establishing your unique value proposition, setting the mutual expectations, closing for the commitment, and then starting to talk about the next steps, you're going to get this to work really, really well. So that said, we're going to park that here. We're a little over time, and I appreciate you hanging out. I know that we had a beginning. We had Steve in the beginning, took up a little time, and I'm glad he did because he had a lot to offer. But what questions do you have about this process? Know that this is being recorded, and a version of this lives on the Bergen County Partners YouTube channel. You can go back and watch this again. But what questions do you have about anything we've talked about today? Any ahas or any questions you still have? I'm looking for 1 or 2.
I just have a question. I don't want to overwhelm my buyer, my client, asking so many questions that they get, or they just feel like I'm too pushy, even asking most important questions. How do I make them realize that these are actually very important questions before we get in the agreement?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. And there's a couple techniques. One is don't be pushy. Right? If you're worried about asking questions and coming off as pushy, don't be pushy. But the other way is, just as I said, summary and introduction was one of the ways to move through the process linguistically of moving from step to step. There's another technique that's called context and permission. And one of the things that is important to do, especially if you're going to do something that might be uncomfortable, is to give a context as to why it's important and ask permission to proceed. And so how this might sound, is it Parul? Is that how you pronounce your name? I want to make sure I have your name.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Parul. Yes, thank you.
Parul, first of all, you have asked a lot of great questions in all the classes today, so kudos to you.
Thank you.
Context and permission sounds like this. It sounds like this. Parul, it's really important that to my team and I, it's really important to all of us that we make sure that we understand everything that we need to know to really give you the best chance of getting the home that you want. Context. Would it be okay if I asked you a few questions? Permission. And people will always say yes. They will not say no. But by taking the time to let them know that there's a reason why you're doing it and to honor them enough to get permission to proceed, context and permission is the way that you can ease into this and break down resistance. And it works for everything. It works for when you have to ask delicate questions about your finances. You know what, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, let's put it in the seller context. It's really important when we're selling your home that we not only get your home under contract, but we make sure that we get enough money at the closing table to cover any outstanding obligations that are still associated with this home. Would it be okay if I asked you a couple questions that might sound a little more personal than you might want? Context and permission. Then we start to ask, how much do you owe? Look, you have to ask anyway on the listing. We'll talk about that another day. But you have to ask that question, and learning how to create a context for it and then to ask permission is the tool, the linguistic tool that will ease you into those questions so that they don't come off feeling like you're the district attorney. This is not a police interrogation. This is a conversation, and as long as people understand why you're asking them to do and they agree that it matters, they'll do it. But just don't be pushy, right?